John 11. We're going to look at this first half of this chapter, and I'm going to lean on you a little bit more for this class than what I normally do. But there's just a lot going on in John 11, and at the same time, because of the way we broke this chapter up, we got a lot less ground to cover today and Wednesday than we normally do. I mean, we covered 42 verses last class, and today we're only covering 27. I'm going to have a serious conversation with that guy who arranged the structure for this class. He and I are going to look at each other in the mirror tonight and have a really frank conversation about how he did a bad job laying this out. But anyways, John 11, that's where we'll be, verses 1 through 27. I've asked Matt to lead us in a word of prayer, and then we'll dive into our text. So, Brother Matt.
Lord God, our great Creator, Father, praise your name. I'm grateful for a time to come together like this to study your word. Father, pray that you be with us as we do so. We are grateful for your word, and we pray that we do our best to apply it to our lives, to spread it to others. Lord, pray that you be with us as we go through this class, and we be with Devan as he helps us bring lessons from your word. Lord, thank you for our many blessings, and we're grateful for your Son, Jesus. Lord, we ask all these things if it's your will, and we pray all these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. So John 11. Back up just a little bit. John 10, verse 40, please. He went away again beyond the Jordan to the place where John was baptizing at first, and there he stayed. We talked about this in John 1. We can't nail down with real clear precision where this was. All we really know is it was beyond the Jordan, which means what exactly? What does that mean, beyond the Jordan? East side, I heard somebody say it. At the east side of the Jordan River. So let me show you this. So here's the Jordan. So when he says east side, that's what he's talking about. When he says beyond the Jordan, he's talking about the east side of the Jordan River as contrast to the west, and that is because Jerusalem's right here. So the reason he says beyond the Jordan, and talking about that other side, and there'll be some places in the Gospels where that happens too. The writer will say something about on the other side of the Jordan. The other side of what? From what? Well, it's always from the west side and predominantly Jerusalem, because while this was part of the Promised Land, this was really, this was really the big section of the Promised Land, okay? So he says this is over beyond the Jordan. Not real sure where that was. Let's see here. I think I've got a map. I don't have a map. I'm going to talk to my map guy too, apparently. But we'll see. But beyond the Jordan, there's some discussion. There's sometimes scholars put it up here on the south end of the Sea of Galilee, and sometimes scholars put it down here closer to this area of Perea. I'm not going to arm wrestle you either way. The point is, because of the conflict in John 10, he's got out of Dodge for a few days. Okay, so he's out beyond the Jordan, and this is in that interim where we're between feasts now. Go back to this map. We're between feasts now because this is John 10 dedication. Next time he's in, it'll be the Passover when he's being killed. So we've got this little period here where we've got a few months where he's just going to get out of country for a while. And so he gets out of the city of Jerusalem, and that's where he is now at John 11. So John 11, verse 1.
Whatever you're doing up there is not doing it up there.
It's not.
No.
Okay, thank you for telling me. Because man, I was having we were doing really good up here. Let me try this again. Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, y'all should have seen what I was doing because it looked good up here where I was drawing. All right, let's try this again. All right. Hey, by the way, if that happens, let me know because otherwise I'm like, I'm really wowing these people with
It's kind of humorous for a while.
Yeah. So here's John 10. Here's where he's going to come back to the city of Jerusalem for the Passover, and that's where he's going to be killed. And so we've got these few months here where he's going to be out. Okay, that's what I was doing a minute ago. I probably did more than that, but I'm going to leave it there. All right, so John 11, verse 1. Verse 1. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore his sister sent to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, The sickness is not to death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to his disciples, let us go to Judea again. His disciples said to him, Rabbi, lately the Jews sought to stone you, and are you going there again? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks in the night, he stumbles because there is no light in him. These things he said, and after that he said to them, our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go that I may wake him up out of sleep. Then his disciples said, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get well. However, Jesus spoke of his death, but they thought that he was speaking about taking rest in sleep. Then Jesus said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him. Then Thomas, who is called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, let us go, that we may die with him. Okay, so back up verse 1. Lazarus of Bethany. Now, there's already been a Bethany mentioned in John's Gospel, but these are not the same Bethanies. In fact, back to this map. That's the discussion here. There's a Bethany up here, but we're talking about this Bethany. You can probably see here, this Bethany right here. So here's Jerusalem, here's Bethany. So that's where all of this is going to take place in John chapter 11. Really important couple of points there about that we'll get to as we work through this chapter. So, is this the first time this family has been mentioned in John's Gospel? Yes. 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 Now, here's something to think about. Where else are they mentioned? Now, we already know in John's Gospel, John chapter 8, we're going to get to in a minute, but where is another big text where this family is mentioned in another Gospel? Does anybody remember? Kind of obscure here. Kind of obscure. Maybe a scene where one sister is waiting on Jesus and one sister is sitting at his feet. Anybody ringing a bell? Some of that? Okay. That's Luke chapter 10. That's Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. You might have a footnote. Your Bible has footnotes. That's probably in there somewhere around John 11, verse 1. But that's Luke 10, 38 through 42. That's where we kind of know this couple. There's a couple of odd things about this. Verse 2, it was that Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil, wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. I'm sorry. When has that happened? Anybody know? Anybody know when that happens?
My footnote says Matthew 26.
Matthew 26.
I don't think that's right.
That's tying to something else. That's tying to something else. When does verse 2, John 11, verse 2, it was that Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil, wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. When? It's the next chapter. It's the next chapter. Thank you, Dallas. Okay, that makes an interesting conundrum then, doesn't it? So John 12, he hasn't written yet, but he refers to it. Everybody see that? What would that mean then, folks? Let's think about this for a second. What would that mean? If he says in John 11, verse 2, it was that Mary who anointed the Lord with oil, wiped his feet with her hair, it's that Mary, he hasn't written that yet. That's coming in John 12, verses 1 through 7, 1 through 8. What would that mean then about what John is saying now? People already knew the story. Oh, interesting, huh? Interesting. Now, there is another account where something very similar to this happens. Mark 14. It's not the same. There's too many things about it that are not the same, but it sounds very much the same. And even in Mark 14, Jesus says, the disciples come to him and say, hey, that was expensive. We should have saved that for another occasion, give to the poor, blah, 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 blah. And Jesus says, you leave her alone. She's basically anointing the dead, and what she has done will be told as part of the gospel. Which, again, really seems to kind of complement some of what's happening in John 11, John 12, but they're not the same story. Okay, they're just not. There's too many things about it that are different. But yes, verse 2, people know this story. People know this story. Interesting side note here. There was a Jewish bone box that was found in the 1800s that had Lazarus and I believe it was Martha's names on it from Bethany. Now, that does not mean, oh, that's them. No, what it means is that was a common first century Jewish name. Okay? But anybody that's done any sort of serious study in the historical veracity of the Gospels and the book of Acts quickly discovers that the names in the Gospels are first century names. You may say, how does that really help? Think about it in our world. When you see a name like Harold, you know, those names are coming back around in our world, but what do you generally think of? You think of a guy that was born 60, 70, 80 years ago. That's an older name. But, you know, like I said, our culture's all messed up, making names and, you know, messing up the whole system. But rewind the clock before the internet, and that was very much a thing. You know, lots of names in certain eras, like, you know, Catherine's and Elizabeth's and stuff like that. Yeah, that's where a lot of that stuff comes from, okay? And so that's where you're getting some of these names. But these people were real history people, okay? So Mary anoints the Lord with fragrant oil, wiped his feet with her hair. It's her brother Lazarus that's sick. So, verse 3, therefore his sister sent to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. You got to observe, John is called one of the sons of what? Anybody remember that? The sons of thunder. Okay, why is he called a son of thunder? Does anybody remember the account in Luke 9 where they pass through a city of Samaria and James and John go to Jesus and say, hey, Lord, let's call down fire from heaven to consume all these people because they're awful heathens. And he's like, oh, okay, all right, come here, John. Come here, John. Come here, John. You need to stop doing this. It's interesting, though, that this guy, John, who's like, hey, burn them all to hell, is the same John who has love in the epistles. And what's the focal point in John's gospel even? The loving capacity of Jesus our King. And so here he is, the one who loves Lazarus. We're not really told a lot of the details about some of this, but for whatever reason, there was a really close affinity between Jesus and these three siblings, Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. Maybe it goes back to him staying with them when he's around the city of Jerusalem. Maybe it goes back to some of the events of Luke 10. We aren't told, so we just won't speculate. The point being, verse 3, this man he loves is sick. Verse 4, what would you expect in verse 4?
You'd expect that he loves him and he goes...
Exactly. You would expect, Jesus just finds out a guy he loves is sick. You would expect, he's just like, all right, well, let's go. What happens instead? He no go. Okay? He stay. So look at verse 4. He says, the sickness is not to death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. I want to tie in the next two verses. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister Mary. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong verse. And Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was. Does anybody else read verses 4, 5, and 6 and think, well, that's weird. That's weird. He loves Lazarus. You would expect verse 4, like Jeff said, oh, let's go, guys. Everybody, load up your stuff. Let's go. He doesn't. He almost, can I say the word? He seems almost callous in verse 4. Yeah, he's not sick to death. And, this is for the glory of God. And then John reminds us, verse 5, he loves these people. So it's almost like verse 4, it's like, well, there's some callousness here. John reminds us, verse 5, no, he really does love these people. And then again in verse 6, you would say, okay, now he's going to go. He said something really intelligent that's way above people's heads, but now he's going to go to Lazarus. Verse 6, heard he's sick, and he stays 2 more days. Anybody else struck as this whole thing is odd? Everything that's happening right here is odd. All right? How long will Lazarus be in the tomb by the time Jesus gets there? 4 days. 4 days. 4 days. 4 days. Which means what in verse 6? If he leaves immediately, Lazarus has been in the tomb 2 days still. So maybe that's part of what's going on here. Maybe that's part, there's maybe Jesus knows some stuff that's not being told right now. He leaves right this moment. Lazarus is still going to be dead, and he still will have been in the tomb 2 days. Okay? That's also not counting the potential travel time. So, he's not going to get an Uber from the other side of the Jordan and ship him across to Bethany. That's not happening in John 12 or John 11. So he's probably a day, maybe as much as 2 days travel time to get there anyways. And so that's part of this discussion too, guys. But maybe there's more work here. You have to keep in mind, I think this is an important point. There are things Jesus does in this chapter in particular that really you look at and you go, I don't understand what he's doing there. Why does he do it that way? Why does he allow this? Why is he waiting? Why, what in the world? But a couple of really important key points that are mentioned in John 11 here that help root us in, maybe I should make this one. Even when we don't understand, we can trust that he loves us. Do y'all see that in the passage? I don't understand all this work in there with Lazarus. You think we don't understand? How did Mary and Martha feel? They didn't understand. But John keeps reminding us, hey, you don't understand? That's okay. He loves you. He loves you. Trust him. So Jesus loved Martha. He loved her sister Mary. And yes, he loved Lazarus. But he stays 2 more days in the place where he was. Now notice verse 7. Then after this, he said to his disciples, let us go to Judea again. So his disciples said to him, verse 8, Rabbi, lately the Jews sought to stone you, and are you going there again? The reality is, they're always wanting to stone him in John's gospel. John 8, they want to stone him. John 10, they want to stone him. So what's different now? Well, nothing. Nothing is. But again, that's part of what's working through this text is Jesus is not afraid of them. He's not afraid of them. Not one bit. But he is working on a very specific, particular timeline, and it's not theirs. He's working on the Father's timeline. But boy, I tell you, his disciples, how would that look to them? In fact, in some ways, they might have really understood verse 6. Oh yeah, he's going to stay. He's going to stay because Lazarus is dying. That's awful. But if Jesus goes, they're going to stone him. But then Jesus, I think, shock and awe, man. Verse 7, he's like, no, we're going up to Judea. And now the disciples remind him, they're wanting to kill you. Now notice what Jesus says. Are there not 12 hours in the day? And if anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. And if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because there's no light in him. Now let's ask, what does that have to do with him going to Jerusalem and facing people who want to stone him? What does that have to do with this text? I'll make you think now. What does that have to do with this context?
The day is the time that he's going to work. So the day versus night, the Jewish calendar, the day and night.
There we go.
So it's the day he's going to work.
There we go.
He's not going to allow those who threaten him to affect his ability to do his Father's work.
That's exactly right. So contrary to modern American views, Jews had a 12-hour workday. Okay? What Jesus is talking about is essentially saying, I'm here to work. I'm going to go do my job. I am going to go do my job because it's daytime, it's time for work, that's what's appropriate. There's also some really cool, I don't know if you would say allegorical things here necessarily, but he's essentially, there's another layer to this discussion. Those who follow Jesus are walking in what? Walking in the light. And those who are not following Jesus are walking in darkness. And essentially what Jesus is, when John's gospel especially, guys, he speaks at this level, and he means this level, but at the same time, he means this level too. Okay? Lots of implied things. Lots of imagery. Okay? So he essentially says, I'm here to work. It's daytime. That's what's appropriate. And ultimately, you follow me, you're walking in the light. And if you don't, you're going to stumble all around. You have no hope. There is no walking after Jesus in the darkness. There's no light in that person. And so there's this hopelessness. I want you to notice verse 11. These things he said, and after that he said to them, our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go that I may wake him out of sleep. Oh man, I got to tell you guys, this is one of those little statements. When you see it, you're going to go, whoa. Are you ready? Notice the pronouns in verse 11. What's the first one he uses? What's the first one he used? First pronoun he uses in verse 11 when he starts speaking. Okay, when he starts speaking in verse 11. Yeah, our. Yeah, you'd said that and I thought, okay, did I miss one? What am I looking at here? Yeah. When he starts speaking, he says, our friend. Everybody see that? What's the next one he uses? I. Oh, let's think on that for a second. He says, our friend, Lazarus. But he does not say, we are going to raise him. Y'all see that? He says, he's our friend. But I go and I wake him. That's a really subtle change in verse 11. You need to make sure you see, okay? So he might be our friend, but it's Jesus and Jesus alone who will raise Lazarus from the dead. Y'all see that? Okay, so notice verse 12. His disciples, in typical disciple fashion, say, that's in the Greek, by the way. So the disciples say, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get well. This is kind of interesting. You know, we use that expression today, he's asleep in the Lord. Well, you know, they actually used that expression in the first century. This person is asleep. It was an expression that meant dead. Okay? In an Orthodox Jewish mind, which is going to come up in a minute, that would mean they're asleep until they're woken up for the resurrection. And so the disciples, for whatever reason, are oblivious to a very common expression among the Jews. He's just asleep. And they go, well, if he's only asleep, Lord, he'll wake up. What are you doing, guys?
That's because they didn't understand what he was saying in verse 4 when he said his sickness is not unto death.
Yeah.
So maybe, they're like, well, you just said it.
Yeah,
sick enough to die. So
Jeff, don't cut them slack. We don't. Hey, listen. In this class, we don't cut stupidity slack. No,
he was speaking. I even believe in verse 4, he was speaking on levels.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And I think you're probably right. You know, if you're thinking even right here in this situation, all of this is unfolding quickly. Okay, with the exception of the 2 days between. But the reality is, he just said he's not going to die. He's not sick to death. And now they're saying, well, if he is asleep, then he'll get well. Notice what happens. Jesus, verse 13, Jesus spoke of his death, but they thought he was speaking about taking rest in sleep. So verse 14, Jesus says it plainly. Lazarus is dead. You know, I can't help but see a little comedic stuff in these verses sometimes because, I can almost see Jesus exasperated like, Lazarus is dead, okay? Yeah, I said he was asleep. He's dead. Now everybody clear? Okay. So he says, Lazarus is dead. Notice verse 15. And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him. Again, kind of odd, isn't it? Jesus just said his buddy that he loves is dead, and the next comment is, I'm glad. What's happening here? Why would he be glad? Now, he says it in the verse, I'm glad for your sakes I was not there, that you may believe. Now, somebody explain that. I'm glad I wasn't there for your sakes, that you may believe. What's he working on? Larry?
To me, it's kind of like what he did with the blind man back before. He could have healed this man from being blind, or this could have happened back when he was real young, and he could have enjoyed a full life.
Yeah.
But now, he did that
Yeah.
to show the glory of God.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. That's what he's doing here.
Yes.
He could have healed him easily.
Yes.
By
Yes.
a piece of cloth or anything.
Yes. That is exactly right. Now, John's gospel does not record near as many signs and wonders as the synoptic accounts do. But Jesus has already demonstrated a lot. And John has alluded to this. John will just shorthand it. He performed signs and wonders or something like that. But Jesus has already demonstrated he's got the power to heal these people. But he's trying to get something more. He's trying to show them something bigger. Healing him from a sickness to death is not going to help right now. He wants something more. Okay? And he's going to use that to the glory of God. And so that's exactly what's going on. He says, I'm glad I wasn't there. I would have just prevented his death. But more's going to happen here that you may believe. Okay? Now, verse 16. Thomas, who's called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, let us also go that we may die with him. Thomas, what's his nickname?
Doubting Thomas.
Doubting Thomas. That is so not fair. That is so not fair. I would prefer to call him evidentiary requiring Thomas. But nobody wants to say that. Because you think about Thomas, Thomas, all he wants is evidence. He didn't see Jesus. He wants to see evidence. And the minute he does, we're going to get to that in John's Gospel, one of the coolest statements in John's Gospel is from the lips of Thomas. So here's what I want you to see. Doubting Thomas, that's not fair. I would like to look at courageous Thomas in this text. What does he say? Hey, Jesus is going. Let's go with him that we might die too. Does that sound like doubting Thomas? That sounds like gutsy Thomas. That sounds like confident Thomas, courageous Thomas.
Is there a chance? And I just heard this, we don't know, but I heard this explained one time that this might have been even a little sarcastic in the fact that the disciples were trying to talk Jesus out of going.
Yeah.
Even to the point of saying, look, you said he wasn't, just sleeping and not dying, where are we going?
Yeah.
And so I just heard that one time that whoever it was, I can't remember who spoke to it, said that maybe this is Tom's attitude of saying, oh, sure, okay. Yeah, we'll just all go and die with you.
No.
Because we're all going to die if we go back to Judea. But
it is possible. It is possible that that's the case. And there's honestly no way of knowing. There really isn't no way. There's no way of knowing. I tend to think, especially because of his declaration at the end of John's Gospel, which, he wants evidence. And the second he gets evidence, he doesn't go, this stuff might have happened. He goes, my Lord and my God. That does not sound like somebody to me who's just, oh, YOLO, Lord, let's just go die too. I don't get that. But it is possible. By the way, Thomas Didymus, both of those words mean twin. Both of those words mean twin. We don't know whose twin he is. Some of the ancient writers used to theorize he was Jesus' twin. Oh. But anyway, but Thomas Didymus, Didymus is the Aramaic, Thomas is the Greek, and they both mean twin. All right, notice verse 17 and following. Verse 17. Then when Jesus came, he found that he had already been he had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Then Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, whatever you ask of God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. All right, so Jesus finally gets there. He's been in the tomb 4 days. There may be a lot of reasons why that is. There were some Jewish superstitions that said that basically when a Jew died, their soul lingered around their body for around 2 to 3 days in case they, were faking it or whatever. And so maybe there's some of that going on. I wouldn't really put much stock in any of that garbage. Here's really the point. What does it mean when somebody's been dead? I speak for a living. What does it mean when somebody's been dead and in a tomb for 4 days? It means he's decomposing. It means he's actually dead. Okay, yes, Princess Bride, he's not mostly dead. He's all dead. Okay, and there's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead. All right? So he's dead. He is like Rover dead all over. There is nothing there. 4 days in a tomb. They didn't mess up. They didn't, oh no. No, he's dead. all the way completely dead. Okay? Now, Bethany, near Jerusalem, about 2 miles, that's again right here, just across the Kidron Valley, across from the Mount of Olives. And so he's over there, just down the road. Your ESV, New American Standard, I believe, like 15 stadia or something. It's basically like 1 3/4 of a mile. Okay? So about 2 miles, as the New King James puts it. But that's where he is. Now again, Jerusalem people are wanting to kill him. And he's going within a couple of miles of the city. Now, part of that's what's going on. Verse 19, the Jews that are coming out to Martha and Mary, presumably are Jews from Jerusalem. Okay? Which, by the way, some of the context here kind of bleeds that out. That would suggest this was a fairly wealthy family, a fairly influential family, and a fairly respected family. Okay? What happens when you see a really full funeral? You know that was a person who was greatly loved or respected. All right? You're kind of getting a little of that here with Jewish culture. But that's it. Martha and Mary getting comforted by the Jews. Verse 20, as soon as she heard Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. I got to double check this because I always get these ladies confused. So in Luke 10, we're not going to read this. Martha is the one who's distracted with much serving. She's the go-getter. Okay, I wanted to make sure I get this right. So Martha in Luke 10 is the go-getter. She's the one hustling all around and mad that her sister's sitting still. What's happening in John 10? Martha's the one rushing out to Jesus, and Mary is the one still back at the house. Kind of pretty interesting, but it perfectly coincides with the way Luke presents these women. Okay? And so Martha runs out to Jesus. Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. That's kind of the point we made a moment ago, isn't it? If he had been there, he would have prevented the death. Well, now he wasn't. Look at verse 22. I know that even now, whatever you ask of God, God will give you. Guys, do you appreciate? That is a huge statement of faith. Huge statement of faith. And why would I say that? Why would I say that? What are 2 words in that verse that clue us in? This is a big deal.
I know.
I know. Okay. What's maybe another 2?
Ask.
I ask. Okay. Want you to notice these 2. These are the overlooked ones. Even now. Even now. What do you mean even now? He's been dead 4 days. And she says, even now. Oh, man. Now, Jesus tells her, your brother will rise again. She responds, verse 24, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Again, Martha, Mary, Lazarus are Orthodox Jews. There were some Jews who didn't believe in the resurrection. We know that, the Sadducees. But a good Orthodox Pharisee would have believed in the resurrection at the final day. What does she say? Yeah, he says he'll raise. And she says, I know he will raise. Here's a firmly convicted Jew. She believes in the resurrection. She believes Lazarus will rise again. And Jesus then says to her, verse 25, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, shall live. Whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? I want you to see something, folks. Jesus doesn't say, that's true. Yeah, he'll be raised in the final resurrection. Jesus says, no, Martha, you're missing the point. I am the resurrection and the life. Jesus is not talking about some future thing. Jesus is talking about right now. Right now. Remember John 5, Jesus makes a similar statement. I am the resurrection. And those who hear my voice will come from the grave. Jesus has the power to pull people from the grave, and he reminds her of that with some of these little statements. I am the resurrection and the life. Now we need to see this. Resurrection and life are not the same thing. Okay? They're not the same thing. There are some different nuances to both words. So it's expressing something even more robust than you think. You say, okay, that means he's got power over death. So much more than that. He's got the power to correct death, resurrection, and to prevent death, life. Y'all see that in the verse? He doubles down on that. He who believes in me, he may die, but he shall live. So he can correct death. Verse 26, whoever lives and believes in me shall never die, and he can prevent death. Y'all see that? This is multifaceted in the identity of Jesus, what he can do, what he is able to do, what he will do. I am the resurrection and the life. Now here's the big kicker in verse 26. Do you believe this? What does she say? one of the greatest statements in John's Gospel. Yes, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. Big proclamation of faith, folks. And think about this. It's from the lips of a woman. You know, first century culture, her evidence, her statement of faith would not have meant as much as a man's. And you know what's interesting? Not one of the Gospels shies away from the fact that the first people at the tomb were women. Some of the first people to proclaim the identity of Jesus were women. You know, what ticks me off when people talk about how Christianity puts down women. And I'm like, I got 3 daughters, dude. Christianity did more to elevate women than anything in human history. And women are still elevated. Do we need to respect the appropriate gender roles? Absolutely. Husband is head of the house. The wife submits to his authority. She can't preach. Yep, that's true. She can't be an elder. Yep, that's true. But getting up here in front of people is not the only place to serve, folks. Okay? And I refuse to accept that garbage. I'm getting on a soapbox here. Okay, stay with me. Stay with me. I refuse to accept that that's the only way to serve because I got 3 daughters. I want them to serve the Lord. The only way to serve, it's a lot more than leading singing, leading prayers, preaching, being an elder, a deacon. You can serve, okay? A lot more places to serve than just that. Christianity has always elevated women. Okay, now I'll step down from my soapbox. All right. Let's do this. Questions on any of the text? There's just a lot going on there, I know. All right, let's do some applications then. Oh, by the way, here's the Mount of Olives, Kidron Valley. Here's the temple complex. And so Bethany is back this way to the east of the city, okay? So Bethany, Jerusalem, all right? All right. Yeah, here's maybe a better picture. The temple looking out to the east. Here's the Mount of Olives. Oh, here's the Mount of Olives. And, but this whole thing is. And then, is all that scribbling making sense to you? Okay. All right, let's do some applications then. So what are some ways we can apply this text? What do we have?
I have a couple.
Go ahead, Derek.
Martha's confession. I love that.
Martha's confession.
I love that.
So maybe like be willing to make the same confession? Okay. Or I'm going to shorthand that.
That's fine.
I'm going to shorthand that. Made the same confession. Okay. It's a great one, Jeff.
Trust Christ because He knows the end from the beginning.
Oh, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Why wouldn't you trust somebody who can beat death? You know, I've made this point before here. It's one thing for a guy to get up and just say, I can beat death. It's a whole other thing for a guy to actually beat death. And when you listen to Jesus, He says, I can beat death. And then He beats death. And then all the other writing in the New Testament is a reminder, hey, remember He beat death. So you better listen to the guy who can beat death. That's a big deal. We can trust Christ. All right, maybe one more, and then I'll share mine. I got like 6.
I can't think of exactly how to put it, but when you talked about, the disciples were trying to talk Him out of going, we can talk ourselves out of so much.
Yeah.
And so whether it's baptism, whether it's teaching the gospel to others, but don't doubt or don't try to talk yourself out of things.
Okay, so don't talk yourself out of what's right. I really like that because, we were talking last Sunday a little bit, and I think last Wednesday we talked a little bit about this. There are people who don't accept Christianity not because it lacks evidence, but because they don't want to. And you want to see how some of those ideas complement each other. There are people who will talk themselves out of our faith, not on evidence, on want to. All right, good stuff. All right, let me share you mine. Number 1, sickness can be used to God's glory. As painful a truth as that is, it is still a truth. It's not just a truth because of verse 4 either. I mean, this is kind of part of the hope of our faith. Jesus said this is sickness not to death, but it's to the glory of God. Folks, even our sickness, even if we're not going to be healed or raised from the dead like Lazarus was, we are going to eventually be raised from the dead eternally. So sickness can still be used to the glory of God. Number 2, remember God's love, especially when unsure. I think that's an important point in this text. Emphasis, emphasis, emphasis. Jesus loves these people. And even when we don't understand what He's doing, we can trust that He loves us. Guys, that's really important when we're talking about point 1 again. I don't understand how cancer works. I don't understand what's going on with all of that. But I can still remember that God loves me. and I can still remember that God is working good in my life, and God is going to work good eternally for me. That's a game changer. Number 3, faith and heartbreak are not incompatible. I'm thinking here a little bit of the way that, wrong chapter, of the way that Martha approaches Jesus, fully confident in Him. Heartbreak, she's been comforted by the Jews, she's still in agony. I think verse 21, there's a tone of accusation there. Lord, if you'd been here, this wouldn't have even happened. But she says, even now I know. You see this? It's compatible. Faith, heartbreak, they're compatible. Number 4, we need an even now faith because He can do even more. Ooh, I love that. Verse 21 and 22, she says, Lord, verse 22, but I know that even now, whatever you ask of God, God will give you. We ask sometimes too small, guys. Our prayers sometimes are too small for having a God so big. Number 5, all dead is nothing to the one who is truly life. 4 days in the tomb, nothing. Hey, let's throw this in. 2,000 years in a tomb, won't be nothing. Won't be nothing. And then number 6, you can profess and have confidence without comprehending all of the details or implications. Look at verse 27 again. Yes, Lord, I believe that you're the Christ, the Son of God who has come into the world. Did she understand everything that had been happening? Everything in the conversation with Jesus? Did she know He was going to even raise Him from the dead? No. Didn't have a clue about any of that stuff. I don't think she understood half of the implications of the things that Jesus and her are talking about. But she had confidence that He was good. And so she put her faith in Him, professed Him to be the Christ. And folks, that is exactly what faith is. It's sometimes putting our confidence in Jesus Christ because He knows even though we don't. All right, I appreciate your attention. I really appreciate y'all's comments tonight, or this morning, whatever it is of the day. I appreciate your attention. You helped me. Look forward to Wednesday night. We'll finish up John 11.